And as much things are evolving in an unprecedented way, we are talking about VUCA world, but only until last year we were kind of romanticizing and glorifying it in a way. But right now we are perhaps at the center. I don't know if words are adequate to hold what exactly is going on at this moment. And leadership is one thing that is seeing a sea change through this shift. What we thought of as leadership qualities, the authority, the confidence, the dominance, the status, the vision, the being able to lead people, being able to tell people what to do, is undergoing an overhaul. There was, of course, a very significant and very steady shift in the way we operated. And by that, I do not just mean the corporate workplaces, but in any and every role we played. Of course, in today's time, community leadership has gone up in a big way. People who own personal brands, people who are influencers, people who run big Facebook groups, people who run, the RW at a society, or the leaders can be any and many types. Until a long time, and if we of course talk about, the history of power and leadership, there was of course one time when people were judged or people survived by their muscle power and, the strongest one. Of course, through that, we moved into the agricultural age where people who had more land, people who inherited more land from their forefathers, mothers didn't quite have land at that time, but driven by inheritance, it was a power and leadership structure of the wealthy. And of course, then came the knowledge age and the information age. And we saw how currency, capitalism, and several other forces started to play into the model of a leader. Also, what happened out of it was the culture that we think of as corporate culture, to be very specific, became a certain kind of leader. Right now, we were already pushing the doors on the age of wisdom. If I may quote a little quotation from, this is a favorite, Dean Minogue Shafik. He was the director of LSE, London School of Economics. He had once said that in the past, jobs were about muscles, and now they are about brains, but in the future, they will be about the heart. And it is not just him. We have been hearing this prediction, this significant shift towards emotional intelligence, towards sensitivity, towards a sense of humanness, towards a sense of 360-degree presence and impact and individuation. We have been talking about it. How much that has really pervaded and invaded our everyday work culture, we have to debate on that. But there was a shift happening. But right now, at this point in time, given the ongoings, and especially given the last few weeks in India, I feel that this subject, leadership, is of a particular interest that goes beyond academics or dry verbal discourses. We are seeing leadership of another metal, another fabric, another kind that we never saw before. It's a very organic model. It's a very self-driven, code-driven, intrinsically motivated leadership model. It doesn't wait for rewards. It rises up and it gets up at 2 o'clock in the night, in the morning, to answer to the call just out of conscience. And that is the leadership we are seeing. And it is not just the community who is rising up. It is the companies, it is the businesses, it is your neighbor next door. And we are finding a leader in each one of us. Talking of leadership, you also wonder about, what are the new age leadership traits and what can we do as leaders to be ready and to be empowered for the future world. apart from, of course, dealing with the sense of conscience and the sense of organic community wellness beyond a sense of competitive scarcity. Moving from the industrial age education and corporate model into a sense of visionary leadership. There is, of course, many shifts that have been happening. But I also cannot stop myself from observing another small or not so small aspect of leadership. This is from a report a couple of years back, June 2019. So Harvard Business Review had conducted a widespread study with thousands of men and women across the globe, and they studied them across 19 leadership parameters. 19 leadership parameters. The parameters that are behavioral, that are functional, and that can be judged, that can be measured, and that can be applied in the corporate workplace across the globe. The result was this. Women had outscored men in 17 out of 19 leadership parameters. I'm sure the audience right now are both men, women, all genders, not both, but all genders. And it is very interesting to see that it is, of course, statistically the women versus the men in terms of measurement. But what are the qualities that stood out? The qualities were around emotional intelligence. The qualities were around passionate participation in workplace interaction and communication. The shift is towards an inclusiveness beyond assertiveness or aggression. And it is not so much women, but rather a feminine kind of leadership that the world is shifting towards. And somehow that wonderfully pulls in and fits into some very, very nuanced and very soft and very empowering yet untold qualities that perhaps had not been recognized till now. Of course, the quality of intuition, the quality of quick judgment, the quality of being able to understand the other person, the quality of empathy. And among all of these, another force, another superpower that helps each of the leaders to communicate this quality. It is one thing to feel the right way, but it is quite another to be able to articulate it, express it, and to be able to touch people with that quality so that they understand and they envision your vision and they take it forward from there. And that word is storytelling. What is storytelling? Storytelling is really nothing but conscious communication. It is communication with heart. It is communication with conscience. It is communication with a sense of inclusiveness and collaboration. Stories date back to times, perhaps even before language was invented. Think of it, our forefathers and foremothers, the ancestral cave people, even before they invented language, they would draw stick figures on the walls of the caves and they would gather around fire every evening, and maybe through grunts and through hand gestures, they would share stories. This happened to me. They would share knowledge. They would influence each other. They would evolve as leaders, one beyond the rest of them. Stories date back to a very long time, and yet stories are perhaps that one thing that has not been outdated by technology. Now we are seeing LinkedIn stories and Insta stories, and somehow the world is coming home to stories. Stories are finding their ways into the boardrooms, not just to put a crying baby to sleep, but to actually awaken a nation. And what leaders can do is to upskill themselves, is to empower themselves, and to reinvent themselves through the power of storytelling. When I teach batches, and also I do storytelling coaching for senior leaders on one-to-one basis, now there are such very interesting stories that come up where for example, there's this one time when I was talking to somebody and he was sharing that, the new policy that he's going to announce in the next town hall. And of course, as you would appreciate, the quarterly targets and the bar diagrams and the pie charts are so yesterday. And when you specifically do something which is for the people, an HR announcement, or a regulatory shift, or a simple announcement, even as the case was, which is around, a shift of the travel policy in favor of safety for women. What if we storyfy it? What if he could put a wrap of a personal connotation, relatability in it? I have been, at one point in my life, a young mother torn between child and corporate workplace, as many of you might relate to. At home, we have to pretend like we don't have a child, and at work, we have to pretend like we don't have a baby. It was, I would rather hopefully say, for a very long time, always a matter of masculine culture. And there were certain things that were personal but not professional, and there were certain things that were blue and gray and professional, that didn't hold you as a human being, didn't make you feel seen and understood and heard and presented and represented. And perhaps many of us didn't belong after a point because of the cultural stifling nature of certain things that didn't see us for who we were. I wonder if today the leaders would seek those opportunities and replace their dry communication with just standing up on the stage. Now that they don't know, now that even the leaders are down on their knees saying that we don't know, we haven't seen this, we don't know what will happen, but we are here in goodwill, and we will be loyal to each other. We will hold space. We will talk to an employee in grief rather than just pretending she doesn't exist. And that is coming home to a new kind of leadership. Of course, it would be perhaps a little bit blind to say we have to count the slivers and the silver lining of these very dark and desperate times. But I still wonder what it would be like when the corporate learns the language of grieving, of holding space for people. As young mothers, or wanting to be moms, so many of my friends, they have suffered miscarriages or gone through long-term infertility treatments, and it is a part of my work to speak to them and to understand the culture and inclusiveness, because I also dedicate a part of my work to the sense of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And the very fact that there is no emotional safe space for belonging, of being seen and heard. But now, perhaps during these times, we haven't seen our colleagues for over a year now, but the world is opening up to talking on difficult subjects, on sharing their personal stories, of sharing their fears. Even the senior leaders are like, I am not sure what happens to my parent if this happens. What happens to me? And that's the new language of leadership. And I believe that storytelling is perhaps the grammar of it. Storytelling is the grammar of the new age leaders' communication. The very fact that they can take the center stage and show up, be willing to be seen in their vulnerability, be willing to admit that they don't know all the answers, but they will try to stand up for each other and for the people. When I do my program for the leadership retreat, I typically ask this question that, what is the first word, or what are the first three words that come to your mind when you think people? And then I ask, what are the first three words that come to your mind when you say human beings? And perhaps now people are becoming human beings. People are seeing each other as human beings. What was professional is personal. What is personal is professional. And I think through a very hard time, through almost a time of deep desperation, there must be light at the end of the tunnel, and we will see a new age leadership, which will be empowered by honest, raw, authentic, vulnerable and strong, empowered storytelling, where they'll tell their own stories and they'll listen to the stories, the real life ground level stories of their people. And we will all be able to carry ourselves to work as whole human beings, 360-degree holistic. It doesn't do us any good to take a slice of us to work and another slice to us in the evening community program and another slice to us on the road honking at the next car. We are essentially 360-degree people. And right now, the world is showing us the mirror to that fact. New age leadership is the way forward, and storytelling and the way to show up, be seen, the way to learn the new language of emotional intelligence at workplace, to hold difficult conversations, to ask questions without knowing answers, to stand up for each other, to trust each other, to collaborate than compete, to hold a space of emotional safety. That language of storytelling is evolving right in front of our eyes. It is a shift of paradigm, and I do believe that, of course, we shall overcome someday soon, and that time would be a new age of leadership empowered with storytelling.